the hidden code of your mind, why you destroy what you desire most. Hello, curious minds, and welcome aboard. Today, we're not just taking any journey, we're going on a descent, a deep dive through 5 levels of understanding to answer one of the most painful questions we can ask ourselves. Why do we self-sabotage what we want most? That dream job interview, that relationship that finally felt right, that health goal we swore we'd achieve, and suddenly, without knowing how, we're the ones tripping ourselves up. And the easy answer, the "I'm a mess" or "I lack willpower" excuse, simply isn't enough. It's an excuse, not an explanation. To truly understand it, we have to go beyond the surface. I promise you this, by the end of this journey, the way you see yourself and your failures will have changed forever. You'll be equipped with a new perspective. Let's start with the first level, the surface of what we all know, procrastination. That act of putting off until tomorrow what you not only can but must do today. Essentially, it's the art of postponement. It's when your brain prefers the immediate reward of watching just one more video, instead of the much larger future reward of finishing that important project. Then we have its close cousin, paralyzing perfectionism. It's that voice that tells you, if it's not going to be perfect, don't even start it. And so the masterpiece is never painted, the book is never written, and the job application is never sent. Think of the classic New Year's resolution to hit the gym. The first week is pure energy, but then you start thinking, I don't have the perfect gear today. I won't do the full routine, so why bother going? And by February, the gym is just a distant memory. And a third horseman of this personal apocalypse is the fear of success. As strange as it sounds, this has deep roots. For our ancestors, standing out too much could be dangerous. It attracted attention not just from predators, but also envy and conflict within the tribe itself. Imagine being the hunter who always brings in the best game. At first, great, but over time, you might breed resentment, be seen as a threat to the leader. Sometimes being good enough was safer than being the best. Mediocrity was a survival strategy. So there you have it, procrastination, perfectionism, fear of success. This is just the tip of the iceberg, what we all see and feel. But if this is what we see on the surface, what secret engines are driving it from below? Now we descend to the second level, the hidden mechanisms. And the first major revelation is a concept called temporal inconsistency. And believe me, when you understand this, many pieces of the puzzle start to fall into place. It's not that you're lazy, it's that your brain is wired in a very particular way. Temporal inconsistency, in simple terms, means our brain values present rewards much more than future ones. Knowing this gives you an edge. You can hack your goals by breaking them into such small parts that the reward, the feeling of accomplishment, is almost immediate. For example, instead of write a book, your goal today is to write a single perfect paragraph. The reward of finishing that task is immediate, and it propels you to write the next one. You're using that need for instant gratification to your advantage. But this same rule allows you to detect traps. The biggest is debt. The immediate pleasure of buying something now feels much more real than the distant pain of having to pay for it later with interest. Your brain is tricking you. It's that impulsive credit card purchase. In that moment, the brain only processes the dopamine hit of having the new item. The future you who has to pay the bill is an abstract stranger to it, almost another person. Recognizing this is the first step to avoid falling into the trap. Now let's talk about an invisible rule that governs much of this. It's called the law of least effort, but on a neurological level. Your brain consumes about 20% of your body's energy. It's a hungry organ. That's why it has evolved to be incredibly efficient, almost lazy. It will always seek the path that expends the least glucose. The already known neural pathway, the habit, is a superhighway. New behavior, a new goal, is like hacking your way through the jungle with a machete. That's why, after an exhausting day, it's infinitely easier to flop onto the couch to binge watch a series, a super reinforced neural pathway, than to put on your workout clothes and go for a run, a pathway that requires conscious effort and energy. And this preference for ease connects with an internal structure of our mind. It's a cognitive bias, a mental shortcut known as confirmation bias. Think of confirmation bias as a factory error in our mental software. Our brain doesn't seek truth, it seeks to be right. If deep down you believe you're not good enough, your brain will become an obsessive detective, looking for evidence to confirm that belief and ignoring all evidence to the contrary. To counteract it, you have to do something that feels unnatural. Become the devil's advocate for your own beliefs. If you think, I'm going to fail this presentation, force yourself to write down 3 solid pieces of evidence why you could succeed. The moment you recognize that internal voice telling you, see, I knew you couldn't, stop, breathe, and actively ask yourself, what evidence am I deliberately ignoring right now? And this need for internal consistency goes way back. In tribal societies, being predictable meant being trustworthy. If your actions today contradicted yesterday's, you were a chaotic element, someone who couldn't be relied upon for hunting or defense. The takeaway for today is that we often sabotage a new opportunity not because we want to fail, but because we unconsciously want to be consistent with the story we've told ourselves about who we are, even if that story is negative. And here we arrive at the key deduction of this level, the most important actionable principle we can extract from all of this. The rule is, your comfort zone is your sabotage zone. It's not a resting place, it's a minefield for your dreams. In real life, when you feel that powerful pull towards the known, towards safety, just as you're about to achieve something great, you have to remember that feeling of security is not your ally. It's the siren song of your lazy brain, dragging you back to the shores of mediocrity. Understanding that it's not a moral failing, but a biological mechanism is incredibly liberating. It lifts the blame and gives you an instruction manual, but it's not that simple. But if you thought we had it all figured out, brace yourself, because here the story gets truly chaotic. We descend to the third level, the chaos of reality. And here we encounter the first big debate. Is self-sabotage a form of self-protection, or is it a form of self-punishment? On one hand, there are psychologists who argue that we self-sabotage to protect ourselves from greater pain. Failing on your own terms hurts less than giving it your all and having the world tell you you're not enough. It's a shield. On the other hand, there's a school of thought that says it's a manifestation of deep-seated guilt or shame, an ingrained belief that we don't deserve success and therefore we unconsciously punish ourselves to confirm that belief. What's at stake is fundamental. If it's protection, the solution is to build security and confidence. If it's punishment, the solution involves healing much older and deeper wounds. The diagnosis completely changes the treatment. And this leads us to challenge a very popular belief, the idea that you just need to think positive. The myth that you can simply replace a negative thought with a positive one is, at best, a band-aid on a bullet wound. In fact, psychological studies, such as those popularized by researcher Gabriele Oettingen, show that pure optimism, without a dose of reality, often leads to lower goal achievement. And why do we love to believe this? Because it's easy. It's a simple, marketable solution that doesn't require the hard, painful work of confronting the real, complex reasons why you feel unworthy or afraid. It's a shortcut to nowhere. And here, a brutal paradox emerges. Often, self-sabotage is a strategy to maintain control. Sounds crazy, right? Think about it. If I myself cause my failure, I control the when and the how. I know where the blow comes from. It's a philosophical dilemma. Do you prefer the certainty of a hell you control, or the uncertainty of a potential paradise that's out of your hands? For many, the answer is the hell they know. And from a critical standpoint, we have to ask ourselves, to what extent is self-sabotage truly self? We readily accept the idea that the problem is within us. But what if the system is designed for us to fail? What if job insecurity, social pressure for unattainable success, and a lack of support networks are the real saboteurs? Blaming the individual is very convenient for a system that perhaps doesn't want everyone to succeed. Another major controversy is that of trauma. Does all self-sabotage have its roots in childhood trauma, whether big or small? 50 years ago, the debate centered on willpower as a moral muscle. Today, thanks to advancements in neuroscience and trauma psychology, we understand that adverse childhood experiences can literally wire the brain for a constant state of alert, where safety, even in misery, will always take precedence over the risk of growth. All of this connects directly to the human condition. We are narrative beings. We live within the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. And the fundamental problem is that we prefer a coherent, painful story to a happy but incoherent one. Changing and succeeding means betraying the character we've played for years. And that betrayal for our psyche feels like a death. As you can see, it's no longer as simple as just stop procrastinating. We're talking about protection, punishment, control, social systems, and deeply ingrained stories. You've survived the chaos. Now it's time to see the details that separate the curious from those with true understanding. Welcome to the fourth level, expert knowledge. And here I present a concept rarely discussed outside of therapeutic circles, symptom loyalty. Symptom loyalty is a psychodynamic mechanism where a person clings to their self-destructive behavior because, at a deep level, that behavior served a vital purpose in the past, often within their family system. Imagine your self-sabotage is like an old winter coat. You grew up in a freezing house and that coat saved your life. Now you live in the tropics, you're roasting, the coat is heavy, it smells bad, but taking it off feels terrifying because for a long time, coat was synonymous with survival. And this leads us to a key but often overlooked figure in this field, the German psychologist Karen Horney, one of the first to deviate from more rigid Freudian theories. Horny was a quiet hero because, in an era dominated by men, she proposed that basic anxiety, that feeling of being isolated and helpless in a hostile world, was the root of many neuroses. She argued that self-sabotage wasn't a flaw, but a desperate strategy to cope with that anxiety. And this opens the door to an alternative, rebellious theory, self-determination theory. This theory, developed by psychologists Deci and Ryan, proposes something radical. We self-sabotage when our three basic psychological needs aren't met: autonomy, feeling that we control our decisions; competence, feeling that we are good at what we do; and relatedness, feeling that we belong. From this perspective, self-sabotage is a rebellion. It's your psyche screaming, "Oh, I don't want this goal. It's been imposed on me and violates my fundamental needs." And here's a counterintuitive detail from the research. A fascinating study published in Psychological Science found that vividly visualizing success can actually reduce the motivation to achieve it. This clashes with the entire positive thinking industry because our intuition tells us that imagining success will inspire us. But what science suggests is that the brain can confuse that pleasurable visualization with actual achievement, expending motivational energy before we even start working. It's like tasting the cake and feeling full without having eaten it. And here's one final detail that connects everything: the concept of secondary gain. Secondary gain is the hidden benefit you get from your self-sabotaging behavior. And here's the aha moment. Perhaps failing in your career allows you to keep blaming your parents, thus maintaining an emotional bond with them, even if it's through conflict. Perhaps not losing weight allows you to avoid romantic attention, which terrifies you. Self-sabotage isn't the goal, it's the price you pay for that hidden benefit. Seeing it with this level of detail moves us away from cheap self-help and closer to an authentic and compassionate understanding of ourselves. We are no longer flawed, we are complex. From here, we enter uncharted territory. Do you dare to look towards the final frontier? We're at the fifth and final level, the frontier of speculation and awe. The first idea here is, what if self-sabotage is actually a failed evolutionary algorithm? In 100 years, perhaps we won't speak of self-sabotage, but of algorithmic misalignment. We might understand that the mechanisms that helped us survive in the savannah, distrusting change, conserving energy, fearing ostracism, are disastrously outdated in a world that demands constant innovation and risk. Self-sabotage would be a Stone Age software bug running on 21st century hardware. And this is where science hits its limits. We can scan the brain, analyze behaviors, but there's one question it can't answer. Why does the self that sabotages the self that desires exist? And into that abyss, philosophy takes over. Philosophers like Parfit have questioned whether we are truly one single person across time. Perhaps your today self sabotages your future self because, to your brain, they are literally two distinct people, and it has no reason to make sacrifices for a stranger. The implication is dizzying. If there's no constant self, then self-sabotage isn't an internal civil war. It's simply a conflict of interest between different versions of you coexisting across time. The question is no longer, why am I doing this to myself? But rather, what does my present self owe my future self? And this connects to the future of humanity in a crucial way. Think about it on a global scale. Climate change, public debt, resource depletion, what are they but a colossal act of collective self-sabotage? We are humanity today sabotaging humanity tomorrow. Understanding and overcoming our individual self-sabotage mechanisms could be the key to our survival as a species. And here's the final idea, the most provocative of all. What if the purpose of self-sabotage isn't to prevent success, but to force self-knowledge? Perhaps every act of self-sabotage is a forceful invitation, a knock on the door of your consciousness, compelling you to stop and ask, what do I really want? What wound am I protecting? Who am I beneath all these layers of fear? Perhaps failure is just a very tough teacher. And with that idea, our descent has ended. Take a moment, breathe, and let's contemplate the full landscape we've journeyed through. At the beginning of this video, we discussed the simple, familiar idea of procrastination, that act of putting off today's task until tomorrow. An idea that seems like a simple problem of time management, of lacking discipline. And now look where we are. We've considered the possibility that this same act is an echo of our tribal survival instincts, a strategy to maintain a coherent identity, or even a philosophical messenger designed to force us to discover who we truly are. We've moved from blaming our willpower to understanding the complex mechanisms of our brain, the paradoxes of control, and the profound questions about the nature of our very selves. So now I ask you, what idea from this entire journey impacted you the most? What piece of the puzzle clicked for you? I want to sincerely thank you for your time, your attention, and your courage to look into these darker corners of the mind. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Let's turn that space into a true community of mind explorers. And if these kinds of deep dives are what you're looking for, I invite you to subscribe so you don't miss the next journey, and to share this video with someone you think needs to hear it. Always remember, dare to understand, because knowledge is the only map out of the labyrinth. The next time you self-sabotage, what question will you really be asking yourself?